joining us today on Take 5. In this series of teachings, we're looking at Paul's revelation of strengthening grace. His revelation of it, his experience of it, his prayers concerning it, and then his exhortations. So we're still looking at Paul's revelation of grace, and primarily we've been right in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And so we've learned that Paul had a difficult circumstance, messenger of Satan. He's being buffeted. He's crying out to the Lord. The Lord comes, gives him a revelation of this divine commodity called grace that apparently he didn't know about. Well, we know he knew about saving grace, but apparently he either didn't know or he'd lost track somehow of this revelation of strengthening grace to help him in his time of trouble. So Jesus said, "My grace is sufficient. For my strength, my dunamis, manifests in your weakness." When Paul got that revelation, as we were looking in our last teaching, something changed in him. His circumstances didn't change, but his thinking changed, because he went from, "Lord, you have to deliver me. I'm not going to make it," to, "Woo, I rejoice in my infirmities." Like, why are you rejoicing? He said, "So that the power of Christ may rest upon me." He said, this is an opportunity for me to experience the strengthening grace of the Lord and to overcome in this situation and to lead a prevailing life. This is a good opportunity. He had a revolution in his thinking because he had a revelation of strengthening grace. So he said, "I'm going to rejoice in my infirmities," in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, "so that the power, the dunamis of Christ may rest upon me." In Ephesians 1, where we started, Paul said that you might know the exceeding greatness of his power to usward who believe. Now you come down to verse 10, and Paul says, "Therefore," like I said in my last teaching, when you find a therefore, what's it there for? Because it connects back. He's going to do something based on something else. He's going to do something based on the revelation of strengthening grace he got. So Jesus gives him this revelation of strengthening grace. His mind is open, he gets it, and he says, "Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities." I mean, who does that? Who goes around going, "My life stinks and I love it"? I mean, nobody, because we're human. And because we're sometimes not educated Christians, and sometimes we're educated and we just forget, and sometimes we're educated and we forget and we don't care. But who rejoices in their weaknesses? When we're weak, we're like, "Oh man, I'm so weak, and I don't like that." Paul says, "I rejoice in my infirmities." He said, "I rejoice in reproaches when people come against me. I rejoice in necessities when I don't have enough. I rejoice in persecutions when I'm physically hurt for doing the gospel, for ministering the gospel. I rejoice in distresses," we could say, when I'm stressed out. I mean, who rejoices when they're stressed out? You either have to be nuts or have a revelation. "I rejoice when I'm stressed out, because for Christ's sake." In other words, as I live this life in Christ and do his work, when I hit hard times, I rejoice in it. Why do you do that, Paul? That's crazy. Are you not dealing with reality? No, he said, I am dealing with reality by his grace. And then he says, "I rejoice for," this tells us why, "for when I am weak, then I am strong." Now the way Paul said it and the way it's written is very different than the way people read it and interpret it. Most people say this, when we are weak, he is strong. And then we think about the footprints poster, that when we're weak, he just carries us, because when we are weak, he is strong. Let me tell you something about the Lord. He's not strong when you are weak. He's strong all the time. It's just, we just made that up. Just made that up. Paul said, when I am weak, I am strong. In other words, when I come to the end of my own human resources, I can tap into the divine resource of his strengthening grace and be empowered by that grace. And having been empowered, I am now strong to do what I need to do. Thanks for joining us today on Take 5.